and welcome to On Track GP. It's been a good few weeks since we've all been together, but we are back. It is Azerbaijan, it is Baku, it's a street circuit. It's what we love, isn't it? Joining me is Matisse and Sam. Good morning.
Good morning. Nice to see you all. I'm not gonna lie, this is one of my favourite tracks.
Is it?
Yeah, I love it.
You like a street circuit?
I love a street circuit, but this one in particular, it's just beautiful. It's a wonderful track to watch, I must say. It's pleasing on the eye. It's not like Monaco where you can't overtake as well, so it's got some high speed straight. So yeah, I love it.
Sam?
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I think it's a dangerous track. Like they're very tight corners. That bit going up past the castle is quite picturesque, and with a potential sprint race. Well, we will have a sprint race there, but we'll see who's crashed into the wall come Saturday.
I think that's one of the best corners. That one.
Yeah, definitely.
It is definitely. Right, we have a new format. I'm going to run you through this new format. We'll see Friday's qualifying session, making up the grid for Sunday's main race, with a separate Saturday qualifying determining the sprint race grid, and only one practice session on Friday. If you made any sense of that, did you make any sense of that?
Basically, like what they want, like they basically made the sprint race like in isolation. So before, how it worked was they did qualifying on the Friday, and then they had the sprint race, and the order of the sprint race was the grid lineup for the Sunday. So yeah, they're gonna have a qualifying for the race on Friday, so that's just gonna be done for Sunday, and then sort of Saturday is the sprint day really. So yeah, I think there's been a lot of positives and negatives. I think a lot of people are a bit annoyed there's just one practice session now, because I think Formula One already is a sport where you get such little practice time. The fact they've now got one session, which is about an hour, and after a 4-week break, it's quite harsh. But also, there's been a lot of complaints that they're doing a sprint race at all at Baku, which, as you mentioned, is a street circuit. It's very tight, it's very narrow. You've just got a huge possibility to have a crash and pretty much ruin your Sunday. But
why would you decide to test this on this particular track? It's a bit odd, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, you have to ask the FIA and the heads of F1 why exactly they've done that. I mean, sprint races we've seen more and more come into the sport. Like we had 3 last year, we've doubled that to 6 this year. As you said, it's a circuit that you can overtake, so it should be good in a way. But yeah, it's quite a high risk to have the first sprint race of the year on a very tight street circuit.
I'm not a fan of it personally at all. I think I'd much rather know that the drivers have had their practice sessions, so they're fully equipped for the race. It also lessens the likelihood of accidents, like you said, potential, engine failures or whatever that could lead to, problems going into the race. But for me, I would just prefer the practice sessions. I do like the traditional qualifying. I think qualifying is entertaining.
I agree with you.
I like qualifying. I think it shows who's got the highest speed, who can put in the best time, the best fastest lap. It's competitive. I don't find it boring. And I think sprint race is kind of takes away from the race a little bit, because now why am I seeing 2 races? It's like playing Wembley at twice. It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, it's true, but I can't understand why the FIA want to make this change. Is this for broadcaster purposes? Is this for viewer purposes? What is the reason, or what do you think?
Largely, as most the case in most sport, it's money related. So they want bums on seats really. So if you think before sprint races were a thing, the only real racing you'd get was on Sunday, and Friday would be a complete practice session. Typically Friday tended to be a less attended event, and now, if you think of this updated format, they've got racing or at least a qualifying session every single day. So I think they're just trying to fit more into the weekend and get more people in the paddock, in the circuit, and then buying drinks, buying merch, that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's mainly done for entertainment and money purposes.
I don't think Max liked it though.
I can imagine that most teams are probably not in favour of this, especially when kind of like you guys said, the repercussion it could have. Especially on a street circuit, you could be causing yourself absolute carnage, and then you could be out of the race altogether. So
and definitely the maximum points you can get is 8 as well, which is not a huge amount. The risk versus reward is quite negatively heading towards the risk element, I'd say.
Well, in terms of this track, there are 20 turns, 6.03 kilometres in length. It's the 3rd largest and longest circuit on the calendar, behind Spa and Jeddah. Speeds in excess of 210 miles an hour. However, Valtteri Bottas actually set a top speed while qualifying for Williams in 2016, and that was 235 miles per hour. So it's pretty good. We were talking about the turns before we started the show. Notorious turn 712 complex, significantly tightens. I mean, it does sound mental that you're going to have a sprint on this track. The more I'm reading the information, it just seems absolutely bizarre. Christian Horner not happy about it. Andrea Stella of McLaren also not happy about it as well. Who would you expect to win the sprint race then at this point?
I mean, without knowing any data and just going off what I've seen this season, I mean, I'd still favour Red Bull. I'd still favour Max Verstappen to win it, just purely on pace. You know, this guy is a freak right now, and Red Bull are clearly the quickest car. I think the fight below them is quite intriguing. I think that's actually going to be quite a fun storyline to follow. Even if the title is, say, wrapped up by Red Bull, the constructors, and say it is just between Perez and Max, as you would expect, would clear off from Perez. Maybe that's even organised with a 1-2 in the team. If there's a close fight for second between those three teams, Mercedes, Aston Martin, and Ferrari, I think that's entertaining. That's definitely entertaining for me. So I'll be happy with that.
Well, you're essentially having 3 races in 9 days, because straight after we go to Miami, and I can understand why the grid rules, they are not happy about this at all. But do you see anything that could happen potentially in this sprint that I guess changes the whole weekend?
Yeah, I mean, definitely, like, you can have someone could crash into Verstappen early on, and like that's him starting at the back of the race. I think we had this weird period, obviously, where the Chinese Grand Prix was cancelled, so we've had this essentially a 4-week gap, which is sort of like a mini summer break very early on. That gives the teams a lot of time to work on their car. Like, we've seen like teams like Ferrari, Mercedes saying a lot of upgrades are coming their way, but I think the Baku race, judging by what we've heard from them, is still a bit too soon. I think Imola's when we're going to first start to see these major upgrade packages. So yeah, I'd expect Baku and Miami to sort of follow a similar pattern as it's been for the first few races. Red Bull far away on top, and then Aston Martin arguably the second quickest so far. Ferrari, Mercedes sort of trying to work out their issues. But yeah, I think Baku in itself is quite an interesting circuit, because it's almost split in half, where you've got like one twist and tight section, and you've got this other ridiculously long straights. Like, yeah, it looks like you've just drawn a square basically in the track. So yeah, I think it's definitely an interesting place, and I'm looking forward to seeing the races.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to getting back underway with F1. It's been
weird break, isn't it?
It's really weird. It's a long 3-week period, and it's felt a really long time, especially since Australia. I mean, you know, that's 3 a.m. getting up. It seems like a long time ago and get to recover. But let's actually have a look at kind of what we're expecting from the teams, because Red Bull, there's not much news on that front. You know, massively strong start to the season. At the moment, you can't really see anyone else challenging them. They've won the last 2 in Baku, Verstappen last year, Perez before that. Daniel Ricciardo, though, obviously third driver for them at the moment. He's kind of been mixing in with the rumours about his future at the moment. Do you think we're going to see him back on the grid at some point?
The thing is with Ricciardo is that it's so early in the season for him to already be having these kind of doubts, itchy feet. Yeah. But the way I always saw from Ricciardo is I always felt like he needed this break. I always felt like he needed this time off, a 1 year out, to kind of reflect and decide, you know, first of all, like his love for the sport. Does he really want to be a driver at the top level? Does he want to be a driver that kind of regresses into the middle and maybe even the lower pack? Because I think when you're a top driver like Ricciardo, who's won races, mentally it can be challenging to be in that 10th, 11th, 12th spot, and you might fall out of love with the sport a little bit. And we've even seen Hamilton, people have been questioning him, you know, whether he's going to want to be at Mercedes or even be in the sport if he's not challenging at the top, because that's the mentality. But because it's such an early, I mean, personally, unless something happens, you know, with Perez or Verstappen, there is no reason for them to use him as in terms of actually using him on track. Perez, for me, is the better driver at the moment, and Verstappen, there's no conversation. So it wouldn't make sense for Red Bull outside of something emotional, you know, for them to want to give him an opportunity just randomly. They are fighting on all fronts. So for me, it doesn't make sense unless something happens where he has to come in.
Yeah, I can understand that. Ferrari, however, difficult opening few races for Ferrari. Of course, they had their new team principal, Fred Vasseur. I mean, it hasn't looked good in terms of strategy, and they made a lot of changes. They tried to appeal the decision on Carlos Sainz's penalty in Melbourne. The FIA said there was no new significant evidence to kind of reverse that decision. I do still feel it was harsh. I really do. I mean, I don't know if you think it was a harsh decision or not, but I think it was very harsh.
I think it's difficult. I think the punishment was fine out of context, but as
in the context,
in the context, it was quite harsh. But I think I wasn't surprised nothing came of this review really, because I think it was pretty much a slam dunk penalty. Like, he crashed into another driver. Like, you can't do that.
It was carnage.
I know, yeah, it was a new start,
carnage.
but like I think Alonso could make the point that he's crashed into me and potentially ruined my race. But I get the point that 5-second penalty was incredibly harsh just because it was so close to the end in the restart. But yeah, I mean, it's just a mess at Ferrari really at the moment. Like, they've had such a bad start. There's rumours that more and more staff are leaving. I think even this morning before we came on, that Lauren Michaelis is sort of going to AlphaTauri is the latest rumour. So like, just they're having a bit of a staff exodus, and now there's even rumours Leclerc's talking to Mercedes. So like, it's a very bad time to be a Ferrari fan at the moment.
Yeah, it is. And I have to be honest with you, I've been saying it for quite some time about Leclerc. I felt that the next step for him would be Mercedes if Lewis Hamilton was to leave at the end of this season. So that is no surprise for me at all. But there are also no upgrades that are going to be present this weekend on the SF23. Apparently there is a flow of upgrades that are coming. But again, could it be too late for them to come in time for them to actually start challenging properly at the top?
I mean, they need to get a move on. They do, because every single race that goes by, Red Bull's kind of dominance just gets more and more. And is there any talk of Red Bull having any upgrades? Because like we all talk about Mercedes and Ferrari, and maybe they can catch up. But who knows? Maybe Red Bull are going to come with another upgrade.
Why change something that's not broken at the moment?
Yeah. I think from their point of view, it's just making the car marginally better, whereas the other teams are starting so far back that they need to make big upgrades to sort of kind of catch up. I think on that point that. Yes, they've had a terrible start, but I think they're lucky in a way that this season's just so long. Like, if we think back to this time last year, like Ferrari won 2 of the first 3 races and everyone thought the title's going their way. Red Bull eventually came back and won it. So there's no reason why Ferrari couldn't do that. I mean...
But they're going to have to turn it around
pretty quickly. Oh, yeah. I mean, there's big talk that Imola is going to be the day they sort of start trying to get these upgrades on the car, but whether it's too far gone at that point. But yeah, there's still a lot of the season to go, but yeah, they need to start... We'll just stop embarrassing themselves is probably the first. That's the first
step.
Thing, to not do that.
The first step. Aston Martin, who I think are all of our like secret little favourites this season because of what's going on with Fernando Alonso. They are looking to continue that fine form in Baku. He's eager to continue getting the streak of podium finishes as well. They obviously they want to be competing at the top. That's where they pride themselves. That's where they're striving to be. And Fernando Alonso said that the team are on course to becoming one of F1's title challengers. I mean, that's a big statement. He's only been there for 3 races. I mean, it is incredible what he's accomplished in a short amount of time, but title challenging?
Do you know what? It would be incredible if Fernando Alonso could actually put together a title challenge, because it would be such a flashback from obviously previous times. And I think this season would be ridiculous. That would be for me way too soon. But they're very consistent. They're putting up their podiums. The reliability is there as well, which is important. I think for me, if they're going to put together a title running, I'm going to need to see some race wins first, which is clearly what they're trying to put together. That's what they're striving for. They're not settling for podiums. I think Stroll came out and said that he wasn't settling for podiums. He wants to, when's that next race win? He's literally demanded it from the engineers, from everyone. He's like, yo, when's the next race win coming? So it's going to be tough because Red Bull are tough to move right now. But if they this is like a building block for them. And if they can keep going on this upward trajectory, you never know, next season they might be able to really solidify. But I think this season's all about consistency, podiums, and obviously maybe even getting, Stroll into those podiums as well, not just Alonso. Try and get 2 cars up there.
Let's say that Aston have, continued to have a brilliant season as they've started off. And, let's say they finish 3rd this season. Is there any thought process that if you look at it, you've got Alonso and you've got Stroll, they're obviously not on the same level. Is there any thought that if they actually want to be challenging and winning titles, constructors and drivers, that they would change on Stroll?
I mean, yeah, it's an interesting one because obviously he shares the same last name as the guy who owns the team because of his dad.
Ruthlessness in business.
Yeah, I mean, maybe that's a decision that Lawrence Stroll will have to make at some point, is whether he goes all out and tries to get 2 world-class drivers. I'm of the opinion that I think Lance Stroll sometimes gets a bit of a bad rep. Yes, he's the owner's son, like that's obviously going to be a big thing. His dad's paid for a lot of his way into the sport, but I think in comparison to a lot of other paid drivers, he has at least shown he's got some ability. Like he's had a pole position before.
He's not a Mazepin,
he's not a Mazepin or someone like that. He's got something about him. He's been doing well these last few races. Granted, it's not the same level as Alonso, but still, considering he had that massive bike crash before and he's come back and still performed well, and like he had a few mechanical issues, like. He's doing okay. Like, I mean, we've seen if any team that wants to get a constructors title going, you sort of have to have 2 drivers pretty much getting podiums every week, really, like such as Verstappen and Perez are currently doing. But yeah, that might be a question down the line. But it's at the same time, I think Alonso's got this season and the next season on his contract, whether he stays on past that and whether they're trying to get someone else in. But yeah, it could be an issue down the road of, okay, do we get rid of my son? Yeah, just try and really solidify a chance of getting a title.
Do you ever see if Lewis was to... potentially Mercedes weren't to recover, right, and they weren't to become what they once were, and Lewis was to continue to keep searching for that important title, do you ever see potentially him going to Aston Martin?
I'm going to say no. I think, well, from 2 points of view, I think firstly, if Hamilton leaves Mercedes, I think he's going to retire. I can't see him go to another team. But if you're bringing him to replace Stroll, like
that would be Alonso and Hamilton.
Yeah, they did that in Hamilton's first year, and it famously did not go well. No, so like I can't imagine. Obviously, they've both mellowed. They're in the older years in terms of F1, but yeah, not that much. So
I just want it. I
know
want the
you
carnage.
Want it. I know you want
the carnage. I want
the carnage. But we'll move on to carnage. We'll talk about Mercedes. Only joking. Obviously, they have improved. Podium finish in Melbourne. They have also made changes. James Allison, he's returning to his role as technical director. They've shaken it up again. Mike Elliott moving into the chief technical officer role. So lots of things going on in the last few weeks. Why does that happen?
It's just basically been a switch, really. So like James Allison was in this role for a long time, and then he left in 2021, I believe, to take up this different role that they sort of created for him. And I think that was a lot to do with his personal life. He had some things going on. He wanted to be more closer to home. But apparently this change back has come from Mike Elliott. He just pretty much admitted that, okay, this job I'm in isn't exactly suiting my skill set. I think I'd be better over there. And like they asked James Allison if he wants to come back. He said, yeah. So I think from Mercedes' point of view, it's just sort of trying to get back to their winning ways. Like Allison was there when they were doing really well. They were getting consistent wins and stuff like that. So they're just trying to get their team back together, as it were. Like try and get
the band back together.
People in their best positions doing what they do best. And I think it's quite interesting that Mike Elliott sort of just said, yeah, I'm not suited for this role. I think a lot of people have sort of just said, yeah, I can do it. But like,
most people wouldn't admit that.
Yeah, whether it's a good thing he admitted that, or whether he sort of accepted that he has strengths in other areas and thought, okay, I'm better served at this part of the team. But yeah, like we'll see what he can do in the next few weeks.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens. I mean, it's been confirmed that due to obviously that power unit being unsalvageable after that fire in Melbourne, George Russell will have to face a penalty at some stage this season. They've already overused on the engine components. And of course, just also touching on that rumour about Charles Leclerc joining them. I mean, what is your realistic expectation for Baku for Mercedes?
I think for me, highest would be again just about maybe squeezing into the podium, and because it's a street track and there are potentials for crashes and little incidences with those. Yeah. So that's kind of what you'd almost be banking on if you're Mercedes again. A little bit of a mix up. We had barely all the we had half the cars almost finished not so long ago. So. Yeah, I think for Mercedes, again, if they're just in and around the podium places, maybe they can get one car into third to just sneak in there and keep ticking away and taking points off Ferrari, who have been struggling recently, then that would be the end goal, I think, yeah. Okay,
McLaren. Again, they have got upgrades coming to the MCL 60, but team principal Andrea Stella has said the initial results from the upgrades, they do look promising. Whether or not they're in time for Baku, that's another thing. So we're still going to have to wait. But they did get their first double points of the season last time out. So I guess it's not all doom and gloom-ish.
Yeah, but I think, as Matisse just said, that comes with the caveat that half the grid didn't manage to cross the line.
Doesn't matter how you get the goal, when the goal goes in.
It was quite in context how they got those points. I think, they're a team that have started really badly. I think they're my most disappointing team that, from where you expect them to be to where they are. Like, they need to make up a lot of ground. Like going into the season, their goal was to get P4 back off Alpine, and that's already looking impossible with Aston Martin's resurgence. Alpine have started okay, and then McLaren just haven't really. They need these upgrades. They as well have had a big shift in their structure in terms of the staff members. But yeah, they need. I think of all the teams on the grid, even more so than Ferrari, I'd say that McLaren need a big upgrade soon to get even back to where they hope to be, which is, I guess for them, it's just consistently scoring points.
Yeah.
So there's no chance of P4 for them. No chance.
No, I think that Zach Brown has probably accepted that.
I think even P5 is a push with Alpine. I think P6 is as high as it gets.
Terrible
and who's to say that they're going to get it? It's even P6. Like, there's a lot of competition in there with Alfa Romeo, AlphaTauri. So it's tough. It's tough now. Also, they've fallen into that pack. Also, it's not a fun pack.
They made a big statement with Piastri.
Yeah.
A very big statement. Yeah. So I guess if you're finishing there, then for me, someone like Lando, let's say Charles Leclerc did go to Mercedes, there'll be a seat open at Ferrari.
Your mind is wandering.
I'm just piecing together potential dominoes.
The thing is with Lando, he's on a massive contract, a long contract, and it's very rare, and it kind of annoys me, but you never see Formula One. You don't really see Formula One drivers kind of break their contract because it's just so expensive. So unless they really believe in the talent and they're willing to shell out and they got a lot of money, they're very unlikely to go for someone on those that and pay that compensation.
Baku will be the first weekend that Alpine will revert back to their original blue livery scheme. Why are they doing this?
Well, I think it was just a special one-off. Like, I actually went to the Alpine launch. They did a big spiel about having both cars, and I think blue is their typical colour, but like the pink sort of sponsors. So yeah, it's just going back to how they look throughout the season. Yeah, it's nothing. There's no difference in the car itself, just the colour of the paint.
Nice.
Yeah. I did like Red Bull when they had that kind of white.
That was
really cool. Yeah, I missed that.
Pierre Gasly and Esteban Ocon obviously took each other out essentially at the end of that Melbourne race. They have kissed and made up. It is all good on that front. And of course they want to get back to scoring points and trying to get Alpine further up the table. They've got upgrades lined up both for Baku this weekend and Miami next weekend. And the team are hoping that these are going to potentially challenge Mercedes and break into the top 3.
I would love it.
As a Mercedes fan, would you?
Do you know what? As a Mercedes fan, I've come to accept where I am right now, and I'm in a fight, and I'm embracing the fight because, like I said, if we're not going to get the top team Red Bull where Perez and Max are going to be fighting on all cylinders, then we need entertainment on the grid. And if Alpine were to push themselves into this second spot kind of fight with Aston Martin, with Ferrari, with Mercedes, that would be very entertaining. That's probably one of the most entertaining fights we've had in years. So I'm definitely looking forward to that 100%. I would love to see it. I like Alpine. I think they did really well last year. I kind of felt sorry for them in a way with the way it went with the drivers. I don't think they strategized that in the best way with the way they tried to chase down Alonso, and then they kind of left Piastri just by the wayside, and then they got basically team tags. So yeah, for me, I would like to see them. I like their drivers. I think they're a good team. I would like to see them improve and push higher up.
Alfa Romeo, a team that we don't talk about that much, I'll be honest. But they did introduce a new front wing and a nose to the car in Melbourne. They're very happy with Zhou Guanyu as well at the moment. They are saying that he is kind of level with Valtteri Bottas. Are you seeing that from Guanyu?
Yeah, I think they're showing that. I think they're another team that's sort of disappointed so far this year. Flashback to where they were last year, sort of Bottas was very quick early on. They sort of faded off, but that hasn't really come about this year. I think it's sort of a weird time for Alfa Romeo because obviously they've got this last year of sponsorship and that sort of Audi deal was looming in the background. So yeah, I think they do need to sort of improve as well. I don't think, I mean, when they say they're sort of level, that's like, yeah, okay, they're level, but there's a very few amount of points they both got. So like, yeah, I guess
they can't, what can you really do with the car until they get the,
until
they essentially morph into Audi?
Yeah, it's just sort of lacking this car at the moment compared to where it was last year. So maybe these upgrades that they brought, and then they'll have some more, I suspect, in the next few weeks, like, yeah, to sort of push them back up and maybe still, I think there's a big group of teams that are challenging for those last few points. I think it's already sort of seen that we've seen Red Bull, Ferrari, Aston Martin and Mercedes sort of dominate the top 8 it would be. So there's a real battle on for those last 2 points, which you could say like McLaren, Alpine and Alfa Romeo probably got their eyes on.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting as the season goes on. Haas, they're another one. They enjoyed their points in Melbourne. Nico Hülkenberg, who's been brilliant since he's come back. At one point, he was 4th in that race. It was pretty wild. They are also recently linked with Danny Ricciardo. Gunther Steiner has said that's not true. He's rubbish the claim. But then why not? Why not Danny Ricciardo in a Haas? Why not?
I think because Danny Ricciardo doesn't want to go. So, like, they had a big thing last year where they tried to get him, and Ricciardo he still had desires on being at a top team.
But they're far more competitive now, Haas.
Yeah, I know, but I think in Ricciardo's mind, he said this recently, he wants to be challenged for podiums and wins, which I think is a little fanciful. Like, there's not many teams out there that are going to offer Ricciardo a seat. So whether he gets desperate and goes to Haas, but I mean, if you're Haas, you're going to be like, oh, well, why do you want to come to us now? Like, you've turned us away. And like
anyone would be lucky to be under the leadership of Gunther Steiner. Anyone would.
Like you said, that Hülkenberg's doing well, Magnussen's doing well last year. Like, they've got some 2 steady drivers, and is there any guarantee that Ricciardo's going to improve on that? Like, not currently.
I think Ricciardo is in a grey area where he wants to be somewhere, but reality is that Haas is kind of his level right now. If I'm being completely honest, like he was a great driver and he was winning races, but if we're talking about the current landscape of Formula One, he is not one of the top drivers, and he's not one of the drivers that you'd be banking on to guarantee you podiums and to put you in constructors, championship fights and whatnot. None of those top teams would be looking at Ricciardo for a seat. So he's going to have to move back into that pack that he's come from, which is, the McLarens, and, these are the kind of teams that he's looking at right now, unfortunately for him.
Well, I think he just needs to kind of accept the level that he's at. He's without a team, essentially. I know he's at Red Bull, but he's out without a seat.
Yeah.
for a reason, and he's a third driver at a team for a reason.
Yeah.
So maybe he does need to drop down a little bit, have a little chat with that ego. AlphaTauri, Yuki Tsunoda, he secured the team's first points of the season in Melbourne with 10th place. He nearly missed out on getting that record, remember? The one that was most 11th place finishes.
I was rooting for him badly there.
Yeah, he'll get it, don't worry.
Yeah.
He also came out and defended the team principal, Franz Tost. His recent comments of not trusting the engineers. He said that he always works in favour of the drivers and does what he can to help them. Nick de Vries, he's also still struggling. I know that we say he's a rookie, but he's an old rookie. So
28,
28, yeah.
God. In the scheme of life, it's not old, but
he won the Formula E, was it? Championship?
Yeah, he did. Yeah.
But he's just a bit old to be called a rookie. Essentially.
Yeah, definitely. Like he had that race last year, but he's still a rookie season. I think I've been very disappointed by him and AlphaTauri. Like before the season, I was predicting them to be last, and I look quite on for that prediction so far. Like their car doesn't look quick. De Vries doesn't look that good. I think the only person that's come out of this well so far is Tsunoda. Yeah, he's like a lot of people had their doubts about him. A lot of people thought that De Vries would come in and like wipe the floor with him, and like that's just not proven to be the case at all. Like Tsunoda's, as you said, was regularly getting P11.
Yeah,
and finally got a P10 due to half the grid above him crashing out. But he's still got that point. I think he's the only one in that team that sort of had any credit in the first 3 races.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, totally agree with you. And last but not least, Williams. They are going to look for another strong weekend. Given the characteristics of this circuit, straight line speed of the car wasn't too bad, I guess, in Melbourne. I mean, they were unlucky in Melbourne, kind of with Alex Albon. It was quite unlucky.
Yeah.
What have you made of them so far? Because
I thought they've been really good. Like, I think Albon's been really good. I think, like you said, he was unlucky in Melbourne that he had that issue and had to go out. But yeah, I think he's just been performing. I mean, a lot of people would have predicted Williams were last, and that's granted they haven't got a load of points currently, but I think there's been some circumstances.
They definitely look more competitive.
They do, than where they've been for the past few years.
100%.
Yeah, like.
You could almost count on them being at the back of the grid every single race.
Yeah, and that's just not the case anymore.
It's not the case anymore.
Albon's looked very good in qualifying, which is obviously crucial because he's starting much higher up. And like you said, this Williams car is quick in certain areas, like not always corners, but it seems to fly down straight.
Let's see it on the straight.
Yeah, like hopefully it'll do well in Baku.
Yeah.
Fingers crossed. And of course, the former team deputy principal, Claire Williams, she has launched the Frank Williams Academy in memory of her late father and team principal Sir Frank Williams. The academy aims to raise 1.5 million to help educate and train people affected by spinal cord injuries. And the team is set to run the logo of the academy on the car this weekend. So that's just a nice
really
little thing to look out for.
Yeah.
But as we come to an end and wrap up, I want to get who you think is going to be your P1, P2, P3 for the weekend.
I'm going to let you go first.
I'm going to go Verstappen top, as quite obvious. I'm it's very boring, but I'm going to go Verstappen, Perez, and Alonso. Like they're just the quickest 3 drivers. Yeah, that's a bit dull, but
I'm going to go for something interesting, just in terms of like there could be something here, maybe a little crash. Who knows? I'm going to go for Verstappen. So I think that's his first safe bet. Then I'm going to go Alonso, and then I'm going to go Hamilton.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what I'm going to go with.
Interesting. I love how none of you two would put Ferrari anywhere near it.
No.
None of you.
No.
Okay. I see it.
You're going to need Joe for that.
Yeah, that's true. We need Joe for a bit of Ferrari. I don't know. I think that the sprint is going to be very influential.
It's a shame that not all the upgrades are ready for this race, but it is what it is.
Yeah, but I think it's going to be very interesting. But obviously, I'm backing Verstappen and Perez 1-2.
Yeah.
And I'll go Russell to mix it up.
As always.
As always. You know I love George Russell. But apart from that, that is all from us today. Of course, we're going to have you covered the whole weekend. Everything from the sprint to qualifying to race day on Sunday. Keep it locked in with us right here with On Track GP.